So just tonight in the UK, shocking Panorama footage has exposed the Met Police officers for comments which are racist, violent and misogynistic. One even called for extreme action against immigrants. 9 officers, a former officer and a staff member, now face misconduct hearings. Let's hear part of that documentary. Here's a little snippet from tonight.
We filmed officers who don't appear to believe women when they report being victims of crime.
Yeah, she was pregnant, tried to kill her father. Extreme standard. That's what she says.
Officers displaying racist and discriminatory attitudes.
Islam is a serious problem, I think.
Muslims hate us, proper hate us.
And revelling in the use of force.
He's got his book right, he's just gone.
Let me know your thoughts this evening, gbnews.com/your say. But let's get the take of former Metropolitan Police officer Chris Hobbs. Chris, good evening. Thank you very much for joining me. I don't mind admitting I'm deeply uncomfortable when I see people secretly filmed, off work, chatting with their friends, snippets taken in isolation that could literally end their job and their lives. In some cases, this could be destroy families, destroy careers. I'm not comfortable with it, Chris, even if some of the things they're saying are terrible. How do you feel?
Yeah, like you, I think I was absolutely appalled when I watched the programme. We knew it was going to be bad. I was talking to police officers earlier today. There was a protest in Whitehall, and they were all dreading, frankly, this programme being aired, because their fear was that, quite simply, they will be smeared. Every single police officer in the Met now will be smeared, all those on the front line. And that's something really you have to say, is it something they deserve? What the programme focused on here, rightly, was the appalling attitude of 11 police officers or so. Absolutely dreadful. But it's worth mentioning as well that in the programme, the gentleman who went undercover made the point. He made the point that he sees many police officers doing their jobs professionally and with empathy. I saw many police officers doing their job to the best of their ability. Hats off to them. They were dealing with complex mental health needs, violent, confrontational people. Now, that isn't to excuse the woeful behaviour that we saw. And this only occupied maybe a minute of the whole programme. But it is worth, when you look at their appalling behaviour, it's worth bearing in mind the fact that there are about 600 police officers working out of Charing Cross. It's a very difficult place to work. Yeah. And probably over the last 24 hours, if you looked at the CAD record of what they did, answering the calls and so on, you would probably find, you will find, examples of selfless behaviour, kind behaviour, brave behaviour. But quite rightly, the spotlight is on these clowns, and they've done their colleagues no service at all. And what's going to happen is officers are already hemorrhaging out of the Met, morale is on the floor, and more officers, frankly, are going to go.
I mean, I think who would want to be a police officer in 2025 where you're already restricted in terms of how you can treat people, and that is not always a bad thing, of course, but there are much stricter rules now than there ever have been before. At any minute, somebody on the street can pick up a phone and stick it in your face and film you on just one wrong move. You just wonder how anybody still wants to become a copper, Chris. Like, we are going to see, surely, and I'm not sure programs like this don't help. We're not going to see the application rates for this job continue at the same rate, are we, in the UK?
No, and there was a piece on social media recently, a so-called auditor who was in the face of a police officer, giving him some ferocious 4-letter abuse. And the police officer just took it because he didn't feel confident that if he arrested this so-called auditor, that the system would back him up. If the auditor was injured, for example, would that mean an investigation? Would it mean that the officer would be suspended for weeks, months, maybe years? So officers at the moment aren't really sure of what they can, what they can't do, and whether they will be supported by the senior officer. Now, obviously, Mark Rowley, quite rightly, was horrified, as we all were, by what we saw today. But what we'd like to see, I think, is a little bit of balance in terms of what police officers are having to put up with, and a lot of them aren't putting up with it anymore.
Chris, let's have a look at that sort of Sir Mark Rowley, the Met Police Commissioner, and what he said in reaction to this documentary. Here he is.
I understand the people of London are going to be really upset by this. Some it will cause to question the trust they hold the police in. And we depend on that trust so much because without it, we can't succeed in keeping them safe.
I just wish that that Mark Rowley and these Met Police officers could just focus on catching the bad guys and locking them up. And I don't like the fact that they have to be still dealing with these sorts of issues, Chris.
No, I think that's what people join the job for, that and to help people. And police officers do help people every day. I do keep a bit of a record of where police save lives, you know, giving CPR, talking people down off of high buildings and so on and so forth. Or they act extremely bravely in tackling dangerous criminals, or even running into buildings that are on fire. But it doesn't really get a lot of publicity, the good side of policing. At the moment, everyone's focused on the bad side of two-tier policing. Police are biased to the left, police are biased to the right. It's a very, very difficult time to be a police officer, and frankly, I'm glad I'm not in the Metropolitan Police at this moment in time.
Yeah, don't blame you, Chris. Thank you so much, former Met Police officer Chris Hobbs there. I'm still joined in the studio, night Chris. I'm joined in the studio by White House correspondent for the Daily Caller, Reagan Reese, and political analyst Eric Ham. Let's just talk about the situation there with the police. I mean, we have a very different... I was going to say we have a different relationship with the police in the UK to some degree. For a start, they don't walk around with guns like they do here. But I struggle with how the police are getting criticised in the UK all the time. It is a tough job. They seem to be under constant pressure and constant attacks. How are the police perceived here in America, would you say, Reagan?
Well, I think in 2020, following the killing of George Floyd, there were riots and a lot of frustration towards the police following that. And I think ever since, the police have had a difficult time kind of getting back in the good graces of Americans. And I think they've been heavily scrutinized. And I've heard other people say before, you know, maybe you go to other countries and the police are seen as people who are meant to help you. But here, you're in America, you're driving down the road, you see a police officer stopped on the side of the road, and you just pray to God they're not going to pull you over and give you a ticket and see them as maybe this negative thing that's not there to help you. But you know, it's when you live in a city like Washington, D.C., where, especially as a young woman, you don't feel safe maybe walking home at night. You want the police to feel like they can do their job and they can protect Americans without, you know, facing public backlash.
I have never been in a city where there are so many police officers as there are in Washington, D.C.
Well, that's because now we're under federal control, and Donald Trump has sent in the National Guard. And
well, that's marvellous, Eric. What a wonderful thing for you to do. As a woman walking home, I feel safe at night. That's a good thing, right?
Well, some people would say that it is. Some people might say otherwise. No, I think it just makes the city look less safe, and I think it gives it a sense of a tyrannical feel, having so many military officers walk around the city, to say nothing of the fact that they are not trained at actually policing, and they don't have the ability to actually arrest people. They are there to keep the peace, law and order, things like that. But in a city like Washington, D.C., is that really needed? And I think what we're seeing right now, in terms of how police are being treated in the UK versus how the police are being treated in the United States, I think it's very similar. Right now, these jobs are seen as very thankless. You're seeing someone with a camera every single day who is recording police officers doing their job. There's always the threat of a police officer not going home at the end of their shift. And so I think right now the job is becoming increasingly more difficult, to say nothing of the fact in the United States, where we're seeing an increased level of political violence that police officers now have to be concerned with. So it's becoming increasingly difficult, to say nothing of the stress that police are under.
I do find it fascinating. As a woman, do you like seeing the National Guard on the street?
Yeah, I'll actually share this anecdote. I had a friend who was riding the Metro late at night. She's coming back from a date, actually, and a deranged man started saying, you know, if I see your skirt come up any further, I'm going to do bad things to you, and was screaming at her and threatening her. And then a National Guard heard it, and they sprinted down the subway, and they, you know, protected her from that man and stepped in.
How can you not like that, Eric Cam? How can you not think that is a wonderful thing?
I'm not saying I don't like that. I mean, I think we all have seen and experienced really bad things in the subway, in the metro system. In fact, one of the reasons I stopped riding the subway system is because it just became increasingly too difficult.
You can go back now. The National Guard are down there. Donald Trump is looking after you. He sent the men and the women in their khaki with their guns.
You're just trying to get me to say thank you, Donald Trump, on air. See, we got it.
No, I genuinely, every Uber driver, every taxi I've got into in this city, I want to know how they feel about the National Guard, because it is so different. And just to explain to people in the UK, they're not soldiers, but they look like soldiers. They've got full khaki on, they've got machine guns, and they've got guns, and they're walking down the street, and they're always like 2 or 3 or 4 of them together. And I did chat to some of them, and I said, what do you normally do when you're not here? Because I'm at that point, I just arrived. I thought they were actual soldiers, and they were like, oh, I'm a teacher. Oh, I work for a church. I'm like, and you're out on the street with a gun. I find that astonishing that they've got authority, but they're kind of volunteers.
Yeah, this is Donald Trump's America now, and that's what we're seeing play out.
Here we go. Look at the pictures. That's Ben Leo there. And me and Ben. We went to watch a football match, soaking up the sights and sounds of Washington.
Just a normal tourist walking around the streets of Washington, D.C.
Talking to people with guns. I find it just astonishing. But they're always lovely. They're always friendly. I love to see them. I cannot understand this dislike of them. And every taxi driver I've spoken to agrees with you, Eric. They don't like it either.
Look, we may not like seeing that image on the streets of Washington, D.C., but that does not mean that we do not revere their service and the work that they do. We just think that there is a role for them, and it's not patrolling American streets and American cities.
Would, if Biden had put the National Guard out on the streets, though, do you think people like Eric would have been quite on board with the idea?
People like Eric?
Let's
talk. What are people like Eric?
I mean, people who maybe don't like Donald Trump on a personal level. Like, is it a bit of derangement?
But it's not about not liking Donald Trump. It's about the roles that they play, and even the courts have excoriated Donald Trump about using the National Guard as his own police force. That's just something that we just don't see. That's why you have that's why you have the federal and the military, and that's why you have police officers who are governed by the city, and so it's closer to home. It gives you a sense of community, even though some people may not like their police and their police department. Yeah. But I think they have a very different role and a very different job, and they have a greater understanding of what their role and what their job is.
Do you think the police in these states, because it's not just Washington where he's introduced the National Guard, do you think the police like having them there? Or do the police feel that they are backup for them? Or do they think, hang on, get off my patch?
We actually heard from the police chief of Broadview, where they are in Illinois, and he said that he had never been spoken to the way he was by a member of ICE, of those agents, someone in law enforcement, had never spoken to him that way.
Now, so ICE is another issue altogether, though. That's another level of
but this legal protection. But again, this is Donald Trump's America that we are seeing play out. And again, it looks great. I mean, if that were a postcard of you with those officers, if I seen that postcard, if you sent that postcard to me, I would hang that up on the wall
I'll print it off for you, Eric. I'll give you a copy of it. Because that though, and also it's appealing to tourists. I mean, not
no,
that you're
it's not.
You may not have it. It is. As a Brit and as a woman, my kids were here and they were like, wow, like, Mum, it's so cool that you walk out and I know you're safe. I love that.
Safety is, I think,
Tell my children
concern.
You want to take those soldiers off the road so that their mother is in more danger.
No. But here's the thing. If safety is the issue, and if President Trump wants to see safety become paramount, then all he needs to do is work with Congress, appropriate resources to put more police officers on the street, but not send in the National Guard, because that's simply not their job. They're just not trained to do that. Certainly on American streets.
It's a deterrent, though, isn't it, to anybody committing crime? Because I tell you what, you've also got a lot of here in Washington, the word deranged that you used. Well, you have a different type of homeless person in the US. We don't, we're very, very different to the ones we have in the UK. Like there are people who are clearly have extreme mental health conditions and really shouldn't be out on the streets, and who knows what drugs they're also using. It can be very nerve-wracking.
Well, it's not drugs per se. In the United States, what has happened now is, because they've closed many of the mental institutions, and so what has happened is there is now a law that basically says you cannot force someone into institutionalization, that these are people who can come and go to get the treatment that they want. And unfortunately, they are not in the mental frame of mind to be able to make the sound decisions. And unfortunately, we are seeing most of them on the street. And I think what we're seeing here is that now becomes, I think, a larger mental health issue, and how do we treat that? And I think, like everything in the country, we're criminalizing it, and I think that's becoming increasingly repressive.
Hasn't the president said he wants...
that was to me. I sat down with the president in the Oval Office, and he told me that he'd be open to reopening these insane asylums.
That was your story, was it, Reagan?
Yes.
That really caught my eye. I thought, good, we do need that.
I still get notifications. It's been a month since I've interviewed the president. I still get notifications on my phone from that story, because I do think this issue of crime is something that hits particularly close to home to Americans. They're very, it means something to them. And just to give you another anecdote about Washington, D.C. and cleaning up the city and the president's crackdown, I used to live on Capitol Hill. I moved because we had an attempted break-in at our place, and I wanted to go to Virginia, somewhere where I felt safer. Every day I would commute towards through Union Station. It is this big, grand, beautiful train station, and there's a tunnel that you'd walk through to go to the metro, and I couldn't walk through that tunnel because there were a lot of crazy people in that tunnel kind of yelling at me, and I would walk outside in between where all the taxi drivers are to feel more safe. And I was recently there for after President Trump, deployed the National Guard to Washington, D.C., and I could walk through that tunnel. And the only other time I've been able to walk through that tunnel was last year. President Biden did a campaign speech at Union Station, and they cleaned up Union Station for him. There were no homeless encampments. There was no dirt and garbage on the ground, and the next day it went exactly back to the way it was. And that was something that I don't think received so much attention at the time.
So what I take from that is that Biden was happy to clean it up for himself, but Donald Trump is happy to clean it up for everybody, Eric. It's a good thing.
We'll let you walk away with that.
Honestly, let me know at home, won't you, whether you would want to see the kind of law enforcement that we've got here on the streets in Washington at gbnews.com/your say. Just in relation to that Metropolitan Police story as well, Paula Dodds, chairwoman of the Met Police Federation, has said the Federation deplores any discriminatory behaviour in the strongest possible terms. Such behaviour has no place in policing or society. If officers are proven to be guilty of criminal offences or serious gross misconduct, then we do not want these individuals in the job. But all police officers, like all people, have the right to representation and due process, and not trial by media or documentary, or indeed senior officers or politicians. Well said.